Welcome everyone, we're excited to share some country wisdom with you.
King Solomon had a thing or two to say about the path to wisdom. In Proverbs 4, he wrote, "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure."
Join us now for country wisdom. Can you see this? Look at all of that granite slowly, over time, falling off of that top of that mountain. Millions of years. And after 69 million years, voila, this is what we have. But wait a second, does that really make sense? But that's what many scientists would have us believe. You just add more time and more time to anything, and it can happen. You know, I had an acquaintance, Dr. Gentry, who did studies on granite. That whole mountain is granite. And he found isotope halos of polonium-218. A particular halo had half-life of 3 minutes. There he found that the granite had cooled so rapidly it captured those halos. What does that mean? Well, it means that the scientist can't be right with millions and millions and millions of years. But God can when he spoke everything into existence.
I have heard you tell some pretty wild stories, but that is just absurd.
Well, that's exactly it. You have to use the absurd to try and get people to stop and think, you know. Could it really happen? You know, does a Boeing 747 just come together? You know?
You know, there's not completely a different topic, but I can remember at different points in my life, like even back in high school biology, realizing there are some major holes in this whole Darwinian theory. And one of them that I, to this day, have never heard a decent explanation of is how, with the gradual little steps, would you ever end up with male and female? Because unless you have a conscious nature that you just don't want to call God, you would have to know as you're, over millions of years developing a female, somebody has to be aware that there's a male over here, otherwise what's the point?
That is a good point, yeah.
The two really have to be fully formed, complete, before they're going to do each other any good. So that just never made sense to me, that, they just, developed. And if, according to evolution, really our whole purpose in life, if there is a purpose to a randomly produced life, it would be just to get our genes passed on, right? I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't it have been much more efficient if we were all just hermaphrodites? I remember having my first little aquarium when I was a kid, and my dad said, well, we need to buy a snail to put in the aquarium to help keep it clean. And one day, there was a little snail in there. And I'm going, where did that come from? And so my dad explained to me that, I don't know if all snails are hermaphrodites, but this one was. And it's like, oh yeah, you only need one and it'll produce by itself. Isn't that what evolution should have done? Because it's so much more efficient. If your whole purpose is reproduce, then why should you be dependent on someone else?
Because according to evolution, everything is always getting better and better and better, producing some higher
something
form.
More and more complicated.
And more complex.
I don't know if you've read this book, but I remember another big turning point for me, Michael Bay's book, Darwin's Black Box. In that, there were sections I had to read 2 or 3 times because it was meant more for scientists. And he wasn't even coming at it from a perspective of being a Christian. He's a scientist, what kind, microbiologist, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, Darwin, back in his day, it was easy enough to look under a microscope and see these cells look like just little blobs. It was easy enough to go, well, that's just a simple cell. It could have arisen from primordial stew. But we know now cells are anything but simple. The whole, he talks about all the systems within a cell, including an entire waste removal system, without which the cell would die.
Now that we've mapped the human genome, Darwin would just
it just keeps getting more and more complicated
Exactly.
the deeper you look. And he said, this could not have happened on a gradual step-by-step basis because you need that whole system for the cell to function.
Yeah.
And if you were taking millions of years, tiny little steps, how would nature know to select for something like that until it was complete?
Yeah.
You know, it had to be all at once.
It's so interesting because everywhere we turn, there's evidence for creation as opposed to evolution.
That's what I meant when I said God doesn't just ask us to go on blind faith. I know the phrase, you know, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. Ultimately, it comes down to that. If there's something you don't understand, rather than saying, God must be wrong here because this is not making sense to me, this isn't logical, I have learned that it makes a lot more sense spiritually to go, okay, I don't understand it, but there's got to be a reason, or God wouldn't have done it this way. So you might need to get to that point at some point, but there is so much evidence. He's not asking us to believe that he created everything on blind faith.
Very true, very true. I had the privilege one time of having Dr. Harold Coffin stay at our home. He wrote Creation, Accident, or Design. And I can remember in there talking about the human eye. The complexity of the human eye.
Right.
But an exciting thing he was doing at that time is studying Mount St. Helens. Many years ago, but you remember
Yes,
Mount St. Helens
I've
blew
been
up.
there.
Yeah.
It's incredible to stand there and years later to look at the damage that caused.
And he was going year after year and studying. And he noticed in Spirit Lake that used to be this gorgeous lake, all of a sudden, here was all those logs had washed in the lake, and pretty soon they're waterlogging because they had their entire root mass still intact with the tree with just no limbs. They would upright themselves, and pretty soon they began sinking. He decided to dive one year, went in there, and here's all these successional layers of forest laid down over millions of years. But wait a second. It was
We know when that happened.
It was only just a few years. And then he came back one year, and all of a sudden this earthen dam kind of mud had broken out, and here is a mini Grand Canyon. The whole thing
a
right
brand
there.
new canyon.
A brand new canyon with all the strata, all the layers, all the levels. And you think, Grand Canyon, could it have happened in just a short time? Yes, it could.
Because
Yes, it
until
could.
Mount St. Helens, scientists would not have said that could happen in one day.
Not at all. And it's interesting too because he got permission to do core samples in some of today's petrified forests that they say were laid down over millennia of time. Guess what? Not the case. All one forest, all one age of forest.
He took the core samples and genetically all those trees are the same.
Same forest.
Pretty good evidence.
Now, another interesting thing, and I know I kind of want to wrap up this section because I think you wanted to go do something.
Yes.
But
So hurry.
okay, but Darwin, he kept saying, oh, we'll find more links, we'll find more things in the future that'll corroborate. Well, let me read to you what one fellow says from Harvard University, taught at Johns Hopkins. Said, well, we are now about 120 years after Darwin, and knowledge of the fossil record has been greatly expanded. We now have 250,000 fossils, probably even more now, various species, but the situation hasn't changed much.
What situation?
The record of evolution is still surprisingly jerky, and ironically, we have even fewer examples of evolutionary transitions than we had in Darwin's time.
Still haven't found that missing link.
Still haven't found that missing link. But let's go check out what you
We
want.
get to go to the zoo?
Yeah, we can go to the zoo.
All
yeah.
right. So, you let me come to the zoo.
We got you to the zoo,
I
yeah.
know. Look at these guys. Isn't that evidence of evolution?
Oh, you mean because there's a horse and a zebra that bred together?
Yeah.
No,
it's a new creature.
It's still a hoofed ant?
It's a new creature.
That's a stretch. And see, that's the way it is. You look at these guys, you can breed cats with cats, you can breed a tiger and a lion, right? You get a liger.
Right.
They've done it. But you can't breed a dog and a cat.
Not that we've ever figured out how to do.
Not that how, because kind, which is basically the family, kind is this major covering. I mean, I could work a long time, probably longer than my lifetime anyway, and I could get a, what would you say, from a Great Dane to a Chihuahua?
Well, I don't think that's evolution. That would be devolution. It's,
Oh, now you're just,
you're going backwards there.
but it's microevolution if you look at from the standpoint of, creating a new, quote, species or whatever. It's still all part of it. By the way, I've got to interrupt just for a sec because I caught you on
all the time.
I do.
What
you
else
do to me
is new?
too. I caught you on a little something when we talked about the rings or the trees. You said something a little bit different about genetics of the tree. Yeah, it really isn't genetics. It's kind of the age rings of the tree.
All right, I was an English major, not a biology
There you
major.
go.
But as long as we're on that, pointing
Okay.
out, you said a doctorate, John Hopkins. It's Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, okay.
So there, we're even.
We're corrected. We're even. All right. All right.
But this point is great because when people say, I believe in evolution, you really need to find out what they mean by that.
Exactly.
Because all of us believe in evolution. I have a little herd of long-haired dachshunds at home.
That's truth too. Real truth.
I know. And they're adorable, but they were not on the ark. Only because Noah, if he'd known about them, he would have included them because they're so adorable. But that's a new breed that didn't used to exist. But they're dogs. So yes, I believe in microevolution, but they're still dogs. There's no evidence of macroevolution.
It's the dog kind.
Yes.
Right? And that's what God said to take on the ark, the kinds. And that's why the ark was big enough to fit everything on it.
And I've had people say to me, you don't believe in evolution. What about the fossil record? And my response is, what about it?
Yeah, you go to it wasn't too long ago they discovered the Burgess Shale up in Canada.
Okay, I've heard, Canada.
Burgess
I
Shale,
couldn't quite place it.
Massive discovery of all of these different animals in different layers of rock. And guess what? After this massive discovery, there's still no links. A trilobite through the layers is still a trilobite. It just kind of keeps on going and going. In China, they found an area way bigger than the Burgess Shale. And everything they've discovered, there's no missing links. The links are still missing. Why? Because there aren't any links. The family tree that God created is this multi-branch tree, here, not this one little thing over here, someplace that goes and then branches and branches and branches. That isn't the way God made it.
Or this branch died out, because it was all God's part of His plan that most of them would die out as He's working toward perfection.
Yeah. And another thing, I know we don't have much time left, but a pet thing is God just didn't create stuff and then set it on its own out in eternity and let us fend for ourselves.
You're not a deist?
No. We serve a loving God who cares for us and wants to be involved in our lives.
Very much so.
Yeah. Glad I got you here to the Zork and the Zonkies, though.
Zork?
Zork? Well,
Read the sign, Jim.
Read the sign. Okay, well, it's close.
Zonky and Zors.
Zonky and Zors. Well, that was close. During my college years, I became a staunch evolutionist. I was convinced that we all arose from some primordial ooze. I bought into every argument my professor set before me. It wasn't until years later that I really realized there are actually credible arguments for intelligent design. I have a pamphlet I think you'll enjoy. It's called Evolution Impossible. If your story's like mine, go to TalkingDonkeyInternational.org for your free copy today and request offer number 104, Evolution Impossible.
I have really loved being here at the Ark Encounter. I'm not tired of it yet. I'm especially glad as we've gone around, we keep hearing some great music because we happen to be here. We picked good timing.
We did.
Happened to be here during their very cleverly named 40 Days and 40 Nights of Gospel Music. And I know that I either read or someone told me, largest gospel music festival ever.
I know a lot of times we can hear the music while we're filming.
I know,
cool.
It's hard to concentrate.
Yeah.
You have to, because I'm going, oh, that's pretty toe tapping. Who's that now? And I've really enjoyed that. But we're not here just to be entertained. We are not here just to have a good time, although we are. I brought up a text here that I wanted to read to you that is just so appropriate. It's in Genesis, and it's Genesis 6, verses 11 to 13. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. Sound familiar? That part's not in there. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. We've talked about before, that's why Noah had to build the ark, because the earth was full of violence. But here's the question. It might be kind of rhetorical in your case, but not rhetorical for everybody who's here today, because a lot of people have come just out of curiosity who aren't convinced that it's a real story. So it's really important. Do you believe in Noah and the flood?
And you know, it is interesting, Janice, when you look at this, they built this from the ark. From the Bible, this is a pattern that they follow.
God told them how to build it. It just wasn't some idea that Noah had.
And here it is, over 500 feet long. Now there's, some discrepancy about exactly how long. Some of the people maybe they're looking in their Bible and said, well, it was 485 feet or something. The difference was,
Did you know there were different cubits?
Yeah.
I don't remember that from math class way back when.
Because it's from the tip of your finger to your elbow.
And my cubit would be my cubit's less than your cubit.
So, unfortunately, I got to say this, don't hit me, it was a man's arm, but there was also a royal cubit.
Based more on the king's arm.
King's arm, and a little bit different. And Moses, actually, where did he come from?
Egypt, mostly.
Egypt, and his training was royalty. So we believe that probably that's where the cubit came from, because he wrote about it. So that's why this one's over 500 feet, is from that cubit.
Even if it was only 485 feet long, it's still impressive.
Oh, it totally is.
Those extra few feet, I'm not going to quibble.
Now, I've just got to say this. We got the wonderful privilege of going up on the top.
Oh, you're bragging.
Yeah, I kind of am. It was so cool.
I know.
To get up on top. And you think about Noah up there. He didn't get to go up on the roof all the time, because for a year this boat is rocking. This ship is rocking.
You wouldn't have wanted to be on the roof.
Yeah, and you think people come up with all kinds of things. Well, it couldn't be real, and how could it hold all the animals? Yet there's much, we'll talk in a little bit about that,
Yeah, it was one of their purposes in building it, showing it could have been done.
It could have been done, yeah. It could hold all the water, it could hold all the food, it could hold everything, But I tell you, the devil doesn't want anybody to know that. He didn't want anybody to believe in a flood.
In fact, I don't know if you remember, but when we were touring through inside, there was a fabulous sign up there. And it had this snake wrapped around like it was the frame of it.
Yeah.
And it said, if I can convince you that the flood wasn't real, I can convince you that heaven and hell aren't real either.
Yeah.
So there is a reason why it's important to believe in Genesis, important to believe that if God said there was a man named Noah, if God said there was a flood, if he said, I saved this family, here's how I did it, that you're not just viewing it as an allegory. There's a reason. It is important to take that literally, to understand God wasn't joking around. He wasn't telling some little children's story. It drives me crazy. I know you've seen books like this, even in Christian bookstores, maybe especially Christian bookstores, where they're appealing to little kids, so it's cartoonish, and you have an adorable little ark and giraffes sticking their heads out this window and the elephants out this window.
And it's not a boat that could probably really float either, that they draw.
No. But there's a danger in viewing Noah and the ark in that vein. There is a danger if that is your idea of it, rather than this kind of image.
Janice, the sad thing is it's Christian parents buying their children this kind of thing to program that this is all just a myth. This never really happened.
Because if you're thinking of it in the cutesy kind of form, it's not real. You look at those books, cute little story, but not real.
It's right back to the devil in the garden saying, God really doesn't mean that. Go ahead, take of the fruit, it's okay.
It goes back to, where is your foundation? Is your foundation in a real God who does real powerful things? I asked you, do you believe in the flood? I could just as easily ask you, do you believe in a real creation? That's just as important.
Same thing, really. Yeah, it's about God. And I was thinking, I'd made a little note because I didn't want to forget this fellow. But in 1872, George Smith basically was called by the British Museum to come do a job. What was the job? Well, for years they had been doing archaeology in Nineveh, and they found all these pieces of pots and stuff, and it was just like, they couldn't make heads or tails of it. They threw it all in boxes, sent it to England. When they got to England, they didn't bother really packing it well, and it was
No,
little
archaeology
teeny
has
pieces.
become a science, but early on they were destroying some really great things.
Oh yeah, and so it was little teeny pieces, and they finally thought, maybe we should sometime see what all those little teeny pieces are. So they called this guy. He went down in a basement, and he spent 10 years in the basement. And he put it all together, and guess what it was? It was an Assyrian story of the flood. It talked about the flood. And you and I have been in there, and they've got this beautiful mural that shows all the different flood stories.
Right,
around
from
the
every
world.
continent.
Exactly.
Every continent has people on it who had a version of a flood and a man saving some animals and some of mankind.
Yeah.
And when you have that in cultures that were so divergent in location, in time, and they're all have this hint of the same root story, then you know there's got to be a real root there.
Exactly. There's got to be a seed in there. And these are so blatantly right there in your face that there was a flood in each of these big major continents and locations, that something's got to be happening.
What ties them all together?
Exactly.
What's the common denominator? Noah.
Yeah, Noah and God's truth, right?
Yes,
That's what it's all
there's
about.
your foundation, though. It's real. I think I was so struck. I already believed this. You know, it's why we came. We're already believers. I already believed in a literal creation, a literal flood. But when you park and you drive up and you get the first glimpse, it's like, oh, wow. You know, that is not a little kid's story.
Yeah, it's a little bit the same. Terry and I have had the great privilege of filming a lot in Israel. And you get to each one of those
ahead,
locations.
rub it in.
I
Rub
will,
it in.
just a little more, yeah. And all of a sudden, it's all real. The Bible comes alive, and that's what it is here. All of a sudden, it comes alive. I mean, they could really do it.
Mm-hmm.
Noah could really build this thing. Yeah, this one can't float, but that one could, you know. The engineers have proven it. And so it's pretty amazing that we find ourselves here in this situation, looking at this, and really asking the audience, do you believe? You know, do you believe in this? Well, it's right there. You know?
And God has given us a lot of evidence. He doesn't just ask us blind faith, yes, I believe because you said it, but that's the only evidence I have. I mean, even if it were, if that was all you had was God's word, that's plenty. But he's very kind to us and also gives us evidence in the world around us today.
Very true. You know, you look at years ago when I was a total atheist and didn't think anything about God. I got to the Grand Canyon, I looked at that, and the massive Grand Canyon, and this teeny river all the way down in the bottom. And then they said, that river formed this whole thing. And I think, seriously? I can't believe that. I just cannot believe that. But that's, you add enough time, why, anything can happen, right?
I honestly believe there are people who have not thought about it closely enough. It's almost like, I remember seeing a cartoon with this like Albert Einstein character, writing on a chalkboard. These math formulas, physics stuff, all over, and then there's this gap, and then there's more of it, and in between it says, and then there was a miracle, and then here, because we don't know what's connecting this to this, but it had to have happened, and then there was a million years.
It's like all the old cartographer maps. They didn't know it was there, so here are dragons. They'd write, here are dragons, in the map.
And there are people who just think, well, pile on another million years, that solves it.
Yeah.
Or if a million you don't think that was enough, put a B on it, billion.
Yeah.
There, problem solved.
But people need to know this was real then, and it's real now. And everything we see, all you have to do is go out and look for the evidence. The evidence is everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
All right.
During my college years, I became a staunch evolutionist. I was convinced that we all arose from some primordial ooze. I bought into every argument my professor set before me. It wasn't until years later that I really realized there are actually credible arguments for intelligent design. I have a pamphlet I think you'll enjoy. It's called Evolution Impossible. If your story's like mine, go to TalkingDonkeyInternational.org for your free copy today and request offer number 104, Evolution Impossible.
I felt like Satan was constantly nipping at my heels and I just couldn't catch my breath. I was grieving. I felt scared, confused, anxious, and depressed. My life was literally turned upside down and falling apart. I didn't know what to do, but I knew who had the answers. Can you relate? This amazing study guide changed my life. Are you ready for a dramatic change in your life? This 12-week study guide will guide you on your journey of transformation. This study is packed with powerful content to lead you on an encounter with Jesus. Jesus will use this study as a tool to change your life as He did mine. Order your copy today to experience your transformation. Log on to TalkingDonkeyInternational.org.
Jim, I could go on for the rest of the afternoon about evidences for creation and evidences for a worldwide catastrophic flood, not just a little local event. But you told me I can't do that, and the audience would probably get tired of it after a while. But at home my husband and I have a library of books because there's so much written on it. A lot of those books are from these people, Answers in Genesis, and just a wealth of material that will bolster your faith, show you what a solid foundation we have for our faith.
You know, and it's true. And folks, there's many groups, many organizations, Geoscience Research Institute, this organization, they all have scientists with names, with their degrees in behind their names.
All those initials.
Yeah, that are huge. These guys aren't just slackers. They've got some good, solid information on creation. Don't just believe what everybody out there says is the sales line. We talk about what they're trying to do to convince children, that story isn't real and this isn't real. It's real. And above all, Jesus Christ is real. Originally, they built a door in the ark. That door was to signify you can come into the ark of safety. The ark of safety, Jesus Christ. He said, I am the way, the truth, the light, and I'm the door. We can come to Jesus Christ. So don't base everything on what you hear from supposed scientists. At least give the creation scientists an opportunity to show they're really true scientists. They have a lot of science to back this up. Come to Jesus today. Base your life upon Him, and He will change it forever. Thank you for watching. Join us again for another exciting Country Wisdom.
See you next time.